If I told you that Street Fighter 6 has already proven to be exactly what I wanted it to be, you'd probably think that what I meant was that I wanted an open world where I could beat up Uber Eats drivers. And while it is true that there are some people out there who just never seem to get my food delivered to me while it's hot, fortunately I live in a world where that's possible and I have things handled just fine. I actually meant that Street Fighter 6 has aced the mechanics behind its combat. Well, that's pretty weird of me to say, isn't it? We don't really know much about the game. We just saw Luke slam people to the ground after a DP, Guile can still Sonic Blade, and like always, Chun-Li can do EX legs. There's not really much to go on, but what I'm actually referring to is info on the Street Fighter website. Most specifically, this image. This picture details the drive system. Drive is the stupid naming convention they went for instead of V everything this game, which is all well and good, but I want to talk about why I wanted to see all of these things in Street Fighter 6, and why we should all be happy that we're getting what me personally, Daruma, asked for. Drive Impact. Drive Impact is pretty simple, but it's also surprisingly complex. It's an armoured attack with a big flashy animation. If the opponent gets hit, they get crumpled, and you get to dab on them for a minute with whatever your best combo is. If this sounds familiar, this is actually the return of Street Fighter's ancient 2009 ink-splattering focus attacks from Street Fighter 4. I like these. In every game this form of attack is in, it works slightly differently, but it's a universal charged combo starter. In Street Fighter 4, if you charge it up, it's unblockable. In Guilty Gear, this attack doesn't have armor, but it hits overhead, and if you fully charge it, it lands you a cool air combo up in the air. But this segues nicely into my next point about Drive Impact in Street Fighter 6 as a whole. They removed the stun gauge. Now, I know the funny twirling stars are iconic, but I honestly think stun is quite a hard mechanic to feel very strongly about in either direction. In most fighting games there's some kind of downside to blocking too much, whether it's excessive chip damage, guaranteed critical hits, stun, etc. But Street Fighter 6 instead has stun only occur once you've cornered the opponent, and if their meter is at 0 and they've been hit by Drive Impact. Sounds a little excessive, but that might be because I haven't went over the other uses for drive meter yet, and the fact that blocking attacks depletes your drive gauge in this game. Oh, and if they aren't at 0 meter, whether they're blocking or not, they wall splat when hit with Drive Impact in that situation. Giving you a combo regardless of whether they blocked makes the corner insanely risky in Street Fighter 6. But this is of course only if you let this move actually hit you in the corner, and you don't parry it correctly or mash through the armor on it, which there are seemingly 3 hits of, as you can see here. Drive Parry is Street Fighter 6's answer to many things. I personally was absolutely desperate for Street Fighter to have a universal parry again. It's what makes Third Strike so special and unique among not just Street Fighter entries but fighters as a whole, and I think it front and centres fighting games that it's present within as a mind game rather than just working through a character matchup chart. But a lot of people really hate the overability of parries in Street Fighter 3. To explain why in a short example, let's look at jump-ins. In Street Fighter 3, any character can just jump at you while parrying. They can punish you for using your trained reaction of inputting DP properly to attack a jumping player. Theoretically, the parrying player could win every interaction and parry absolutely everything, and only attack when they've parried something unsafe. It makes the game very defensive compared to most modern fighting games. I think though, Street Fighter 6's implementation should please every side in this equation. Full disclosure, if I had my way, all fighting games would have parries available always at all times, but Street Fighter 6 doesn't let me have my fun. Air parries are out, and parrying in Street Fighter 6 is actually more similar to something like Faultless Defense in Guilty Gear than it is parrying in Street Fighter 3. Much like Faultless Defense, parrying has been turned into a stance that drains your meter while you're holding 2 buttons. And much like Faultless Defense, there's a rewarding better version that comes out if you time the input perfectly. In Guilty Gear, this has you recover faster than normal, and it changes how pushback works from a blocked attack drastically. But in Street Fighter, since it's a parry and pushback doesn't apply, regular parries leave you roughly equal to your opponent as far as safety goes, while a perfectly timed one within a free frame window slows the game down and it rewards you with a much better payout. It's worth mentioning that this is similar to how V-Shift works in Street Fighter 5. You can expend a bar of V-Gauge to become fully invulnerable to everything. If you succeed in dodging an attack, you either attack the opponent with a V-Break or choose not to, and you're rewarded with half of the meter that you used to dodge back. Parries in Street Fighter 6 though are significantly more rewarding than this. You spend half a bar of drive gauge to start parrying, and when it's held longer, it drains your meter. A successful parry gives you back a full bar of meter. Even when held and meter is draining over time, you can see here that parrying a multi-hit attack seems to net you half a bar for every imperfect parry you get. There's a lot to gain from parrying in Street Fighter 6 as long as you stay wary of recovery from whiffing parries that leaves you vulnerable to throws, and you don't just exhaust your drive meter entirely and weaken yourself to the point of entering exhaust state, which I'll explain in detail after drive gauge's other functions. But for now, the next Street Fighter 6 drive skill, Overdrive Art. This one's actually super easy to explain. If you've seen a fighting game, you've probably seen this. This is an EX move. You spend 2 bars of drive meter on doing a special move and it does an enhanced version with different qualities. To quickly round off the other known uses for drive gauge, there's drive reversal, which is a get off me tool that you can spend 2 bars of meter while you're blocking in order to push the opponent away and deal some damage. While in Street Fighter 5, this and V-Break both deal white health, that's now gone completely. The new implementation though is effectively the same, just a little bit simpler. And the final use we know of is Drive Rush. You can either use 1 bar to dash out of a parry or 3 bars to dash out of a normal attack. It's a good way for people to get in on zoners. It seems though that this doesn't need to be done out of a successful parry, but only the parry stance. There's instances in the footage of match play that we have where in order to punish the startup of Ryu parrying, Luke spends half a bar on parry startup and cancels that into a run and grabs Ryu while he's opened up, effectively meaning Drive Rush has a 0.5 bar, 1.5 bar and 3 bar variant. The half a bar variant would be dashing out of a successful parry, since you spend half a bar, gain a full bar and then use that full bar. Not mentioned on this image of how you can spend drive gauge are super arts. There's a second separate gauge for super meter that fills up independently of drive bar and can only be spent on a 1 bar, 2 bar and 3 bar super for each character. Since we have footage of a character getting perfected and not gaining a full bar of meter, this isn't a comeback mechanic like it is in most fighting games. You gain most of this meter from landing hits and parrying properly, so it's more like a cherry on top for successful good play than it is a way to offer the losing player a way to quickly take 50% of the winning player's health bar off, like it is in most modern fighting games. But this gives me some room to talk about the gauges as a whole, and one of my biggest wishlist things that Street Fighter 6 has ticked. Let's look at meter and Guilty Gear to see what I mean. It's a pretty gross colour, I won't lie, but what can you do with it? Well, there's 3 separate uses. Faultless defense drains it over time. So essentially, if you faultless defense whatsoever, you only have 1 other free stock to use at best, and the other stock can be spent on a super move or a Roman cancel. So basically, there's a defensive drain and 2 other ways to use it. I don't want to get into the uses of Roman cancels and supers, it's beyond the scope of this video, but I just want to note, you get to do 2 things with a maxed out bar. Faultless defense and super, Roman cancel and super, or Roman cancel and faultless defense. In Street Fighter 5, you have 2 gauges. The critical gauge and the V gauge. Critical gauge can only be used 2 ways. A critical art is a very strong super attack, but it uses the whole meter, while an EX attack uses a third of the meter, and that's it. You can do either 3 EX moves or 1 super, so you have 2 options. V gauge has 3 ways to spend it. V reversal and V shift, which I've already talked about, and then there's V trigger, which consumes a full gauge upon use, much like critical art does, and it gives your character's moves new properties for its duration while it drains, or it gives them a new move entirely that they can use a few times, while it locks them out of using V reversal and V shift, so you either get 1 option or the other 2 options, so let's say 2.5 uses for V gauge. So, Street Fighter 5 has about 4.5 uses for its gauges. Why is that important? Well, it's because of gauge management and decision making. For Street Fighter 5, this means barely anything. What decision making is there to even be had with its critical gauge? Most of the match you can only use EX moves in any situation where it has a feature the base move doesn't, like invulnerability or projectile immunity, or is a stronger combo ender than not using meter, you're going to use it. Getting damage out on your opponent is the second most important thing in a fighting game, besides not taking damage, and EX moves are key in both of these areas. Lastly, the same can be said for the decision making behind the V trigger. You gain enough bar to V trigger once per round in Street Fighter 5, and you can V shift or V reversal a few times each. But since you rarely ever have the bar maxed out with all 3 options available to you, not to mention that some V triggers are matchup defining or character defining, it's really hard to say that there's much decision making going on with this bar either, and I'm sure you can see where I'm going with this. In Street Fighter 6, not only do you start with a full drive gauge, but you regenerate it slowly over time as long as it's not in use from either blocking or using its functions. While I can't say exactly how often people will enter exhaust state with a fully drained bar in real matches, it does mean that there's a level of management constantly going on in Street Fighter 6. Some playtesters have even said so far it's as important as a second health bar, hence its placement at the top of the screen, and its colours are a very traditional green to red scale for a health bar. Danger near the bottom, all systems go at the top. It means that using a free bar dash cancel is incredibly risky, but it could save your life in some situations. Repeatedly whiffing parries or just staying in parry stance indefinitely will just drain your drive meter and it leaves you at your weakest possible point, exhaust state. In exhaust state you take chip damage from blocking attacks instead of it hurting your drive gauge, and in Street Fighter 6 chip damage is lethal, not just from supers like it is in Street Fighter 5, but from any attack. The risk you put yourself in by improperly utilising drive meter is immense, and adds an extra level of resource management and mind games to battling an opponent. Sure, doing a free bar dash cancel in neutral is risky, but when that's all the bar you have to spend, you can't say that your opponent's going to expect you to purposefully put yourself in exhaust state and sprint right towards them. Fighting games are a mind game at the end of the day, and it's all about reaction, prediction, and understanding. They're a test of how agile your mind is and how good you are at warping others' mental perceptions for your own patterns of action. And that is what systems like this allow fighting games to capitalise on. You can react to drive impact with drive parry, you can beat a drive parry with a drive rush, you can spend 2 bars of meter on drive reversals or just let the opponent's block string end. Street Fighter 6 has lots of on-the-fly decision making and systemic depth that allows for tons of player expression and how differently everyone plays from one another. Maybe you see your normal get eaten by the first hit of drive impact's armor and you quickly drive rush and grab them out of the start of the attack. Or you can perfect parry it and try and get the best combo on them you can. These are all things that highly pique my interest when it comes to fighting games, and I think for anyone looking to get into fighting games or anyone already invested beak deep in them, they should be amazed by this very impressively designed mechanic that really sets itself from other modern fighting game systems. The market was moving in a very offensive direction that even Street Fighter 5 had bought into. V-Shift is the sickest thing in that game and it wasn't even added until the final year of Street Fighter 5. Having a game that rewards skilled play both defensively and offensively and is willing to have tons of universal options almost always available is a treasure in the modern day. Like I said, with Street Fighter 5's meters, at most you can do 3 things. If you wanted in Street Fighter 6, you could just drive parry out in the open 12 times and just see if it sticks. You can randomly just mix in drive impacts and drive rushes, while also knowing anytime if you use an EX move you're cutting some of these options off from yourself. This meter is more exciting to me than Ryu finally knowing how to wear shoes, and personally I couldn't be more excited to see more of this phenomenal looking game. That's all for this video, but please, if you watched this far and you enjoyed this deep dive into Street Fighter 6's new mechanics, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel. I do coverage of all things great, but fighting games will always be in my heart, and as more knowledge and trailers drop, you can bet that I'll be there to dig into any characters or systems we learn about in Street Fighter 6 that catch my eye, or Guilty Gear and King of Fighters' upcoming second mystery seasons. That's all for this video, but until next time, stay safe.